request our next moderator for equity, mutual funds, ARC, and general insurance, Mr. C.A. Shankar Shetty, Managing Partner at Shankar and Kishore Associates, to please share the dice. Our speakers, Mr. Ashutosh Bishnoi, Managing Director and CEO, Mahindra Manulife Mutual Funds. Our next speaker, Mr. Gunshekar Boga, Executive Vice President, Marketing, IFCO Tokyo General Insurance Company Limited. Our next speaker is Mr. Vivek Grover, Chief Operating Officer, JM Financial Asset Reconstruction Company Limited. This particular session is been sponsored by Mahindra Manulife Mutual Funds. I'll hand over my mic to Mr. C.A. Shankar Shetty.
Good evening. Let me warmly welcome all the speakers today. The Mr. Ashutosh Bishnoi from Mahindra Manulife, Gunashekar Boga from IFCO Tokyo, and Vivek Grover from JM Financial Asset Construction. This session we will take in some different way because each of them are speaking in a different subjects altogether, although it is financial. The first is capital market and mutual fund. The Mr. Ashutosh Bishnoi is going to speak. The second is insurance. This is general insurance. Mostly we will not cover life insurance. General insurance will be general insurance and even mediclaim also. And the third is the most recent and interesting subject, ARC. We have with us Mr. Vivek Grover from JM Financial. You know, JM Financial needs no introduction. They are the initial financial company, one of the reputed company in India. The same way, IFCO Tokyo. IFCO Tokyo is again a partnership of IFCO and Japan Asia Life. Yeah, Tokyo Asia Life, the partnership of them. It is also one of the leading general insurance company. And the same way, Mahindra Manulife, it is last 6-7 years. They are very much in mutual fund and related products. All of you welcome. First, I will go through capital market and mutual fund. Today, Indian capital market capitalization is $3.5 trillion. It is almost, it is the 37% increase in the last 1 year. And also, this is the 6th largest in the world. You all know the total assets in the mutual fund is 37 lakh crores. That is about 550 billion US dollars. It's very huge market. Of course, mutual fund is सही है, but सही है नहीं है आपको बताने का है. We see day in and day out the advertisement, mutual fund सही है. Let me also say that with this kind of heated market, sustainability, maintainability of the returns to the investors in the coming years, is our economy can support this, or are we expecting our economies to go up to sustain the returns to the investors, those who are coming now? These are the questions with us now. Also, there are issues, investment objectives, long-term, short-term, ideal investment horizon, risk appetite. These are the things which we would like to have an answer. The first question is, as I said, there is 38 lakh crores amount is there in this mutual fund investments. Can you tell us briefly, you know, how this mutual fund operates? How safe is the investor? Can we rely on this advertisement? Mutual fund sahi hai, abhi bhi sahi hai, future mein bhi sahi hoga. These are the questions with us. Please enlighten us.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So, thank you, CA Shankar Shetty. I think a little bit about the industry. The mutual fund industry is almost 27 years old in India. It struggled a little bit initially. People didn't understand the concept until we decided to let people know that this is a legitimate, well-regulated investment vehicle. The key issue that you need to focus on when investing in mutual fund is it is not very different from investing directly in the securities market such as equities or bonds or debentures, except that you get the help of an expert management house who probably can devote all their time to just understanding the market and finding the opportunity, and you pay a price for it. In the Indian market, this price that you pay is lowest in the world. So to give you an example, typically a firm like ours that manages mutual funds, what we make as gross margin, our revenue for managing money of people is about 35 to 40 basis points. That's less than 0.5%. Okay. That is the cost to you. For that, people give you a lot of intelligence and advice and they implement it. But the real benefit in mutual fund as a vehicle is that when you give us this money in the pool of a fund, first of all, it is held in a trust. It is not held on our balance sheet. So you're not exposed to the balance sheet of Mahindra or Manulife or any such company which does the business. There is no exposure to that corporate. The money is held in a trust, and the trust is directly answerable to the regulator. So let's say tomorrow my company shuts down and you've given me money to manage. Your money is intact. It's not going anywhere. It's in the trust, and the regulator can take over the trust and give the money back. That's one big advantage. The second big advantage is all the nations of the world, including India, give a pass-through tax benefit to the mutual funds, which means if you invest via the mutual fund and the mutual fund trades every day in the market even 20 times, it pays zero tax for all those trades. Mutual fund is not taxable. If you did that 10 times in a day, every transaction, if you made money, you would pay tax. So there's a tremendous pass-through vehicle advantage. So some of these advantages are added up into a mutual fund. The reason that the governments do mutual funds is to bring the household savings the benefit of capital markets. What's the benefit of the capital markets? Let me give you a very small instance. In 1979, I'll tell you in a minute why I'm picking 1979. If you invested money in this city, and I've been living in this city for forever, right? I'm 60 years old and I've been living here for 55 of the 60 years. The money you invested in prime real estate, let's pick prime real estate, Bandra, Pali Hill. In 1979, if you could buy an apartment, there were not many apartments then, it would cost you about 1,000 rupees a square foot. If you buy today or you sell that apartment today, if you have a good apartment in Pali Hill, you'll probably sell it for 100,000 rupees a square foot, right? That's a 100-time multiple. If the same money, and people tell me this, why I say this, because people tell me real estate makes a lot of money. Of course it does. But in 1979, Sensex started at 100 number. It's 60,000 today. 600 times. At an average compounded annual growth rate of no more than 16%. That's it. That is the earning power of equities, and it's no different from anywhere in the world. This is the only asset class that is going to make people rich, truly rich in their lifetimes. If you don't have the time to manage it yourself, that's why you need a manager to do it for you. And that's the role mutual funds play. Governments world over realize that this power should be brought to households. You take an example, and everybody takes the US example, so will I. 67% of US households invest their money in mutual funds. The total money invested is in excess of $35 trillion. That's about 1.7 times the US GDP, right? In India, the total money invested by households in mutual funds adds up to less than 10% of GDP. The runway to grow and the runway for households to make similar kind of wealth as they make elsewhere in the world is fantastic. We are a very nascent industry, though we've been there for only for 25 years. We're really small. And this growth that you speak about, I'm convinced with the rate at which this money is coming in, we will drive the Sensex to a number of 100,000 somewhere between 3 to 4 years from now. I'm convinced it's going to happen. This is the moment for India to make it happen. The rate at which our economy is growing and the reasons for the economic growth. I'll give you an example. Right now, where are we sitting? In the pandemic, the one thing that happened to India and didn't happen to other parts of the world, because we were at the low end of digitization. We caught up with digitization rapidly. Everything had to be done online, right? Grandmothers and grandchildren have taught grandparents how to use the online system to order what they want. There was no option, right? You were stuck at home. Everything went online, and even then, and the economy grew. Yes, some part of the economy did not grow. Some of the smaller businesses suffered, but logistics, healthcare, home deliveries, of everything just rapidly grew. We became more formalized as an economy faster than it was expected. As a result, today we are sitting as investment managers, and as the results are coming in, FY 2022 looks like one of the best year for Indian corporates ever in the history, financially in terms of profits. In terms of manufacturing opportunity, everybody tells me India is a service economy. 60% of our GDP comes from service. You watch that change now. Why will it change? You have fantastic things happening to manufacturing opportunity. People are speaking about startups. My advice today would be start manufacturing in India now, and you will do the best in the world. Pick what you want. Look at the way the production link incentives, the PLI scheme has come in, right? The opportunity the government is giving us, the taxation is the lowest in the world. The government is pushing hard to disincentivize imports. Electronics, we all grew up importing it from Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China. Electronic industry grew at 30% CAGR in India last 5 years because of all these things. Why would you not start a startup? So all I'm saying is where we are sitting today in terms of growth opportunity, this is India's day in the sun. If we don't do this now, our children and grandchildren will say, you were there, why didn't you do it? हमारे लिए आपने बनाया क्यों नहीं? This is the opportunity. And I think mutual fund is just a reflection of how to make money out of this opportunity. I always say to people, look, when you join companies, sometimes they offer you ESOPs, no? वो बड़ा हो गया. In the IT industry, everybody gets ESOPs. In the financial industry, everybody gets ESOPs. What does a common person do? GDP is what? Gross domestic income it is. All of us put together the income we have created for the nation. अभी उसका ESOP किधर से आएगा? Stock market. You have to grab your ESOP from the stock market and make that money. That, and if you don't have the time and the capability, there are lots of young people doing it. They're going to Zerodha, Grow, they're going to all the platforms and making it for themselves, right? When that becomes sizable in amount, you realize you can't manage it yourself. Because dhanda bhi karna hai na, naukri bhi karna hai. And that's why you need mutual funds. And that's the reason why mutual funds are going up, and they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere in the world. So this is my little submission on your question.
Very good, very optimistic, but PE ratio of Sensex is today 21. PE ratio of Nifty 50 is 29. 29. Last 2 years, after COVID pandemic, lot of foreign investments have come. I think huge foreign investments, huge public issues. Almost 35,000 crores has been collected so far, and another 40,000 crores on the pipeline. Is it possible to maintain this kind of buoyancy in the market? Is it a bubble again? Or it is strongly supported by Indian economics, performance, existing performance or expected performance? What is it happening? This is also, my question is based on our previous experience of 4 times. Harshad Mehta, another Mehta, and some other Mehta. We had the market coming down 4 times. In optimism, I am asking you a pessimistic question.
No, no, it is my job also to ask this question, sir.
Yeah.
I run this company and I am answerable to investors to make money, right? So where do I see the market go from here? I've told you my broad
1 lakh.
opinion, 3 to 4 years time, Sensex at 100,000. But how will you make money on it, right? Today, you spoke about PE, right? People have made in small, today if I tell you, 5-year rolling return of small cap index, mid cap index and large cap index, the difference is not much anymore. Large cap is at about 11-12%, 5-year rolling return.
Yeah.
Mid cap is at about 13-14%, large cap is at about 16%. Gap is narrowed. What does it tell us as an investment manager? Get out of mid cap and small cap. Because you are not getting risk premium. You're taking risk in small cap and mid cap, but you're earning only 2% more, 3% more. When you started the year, the gap was huge. When we started the year, for the first 6 months, large cap gave only 5% return. And mid cap and large cap were giving, mid cap and small cap, they were giving 20, 25, 30% return. Now the gap is narrowed. Where else will you go? Who's giving you a better return than equity? Interest rate is where? You think the interest rate can come up? I'll tell you why it cannot come up. No power in the world can think about raising interest rates by 100 to 200 basis points, not the president of US either. Because if he does that, the banks in US go to the dustbin. Look at their balance sheets. If the rates go up, the bonds they are holding will get devalued dramatically. Can they afford that? Why do you think all the central banks of the world who are holding on, they know that where the banking system is, they cannot afford to raise rates for at least another 12 months from now. Tapering की बात करते हैं लोग. $15 billion of tapering, that's like a small little amount, a small little drop in the ocean. Volume of money that has been supplied by central banks over the last 13 years in this world is close to $40 trillion. That is more money printed than printed in the entire history of the modern industrialized world until 2008. Has been printed in 13 years. How can that continue, you may ask? Is that not a risk? So let me give you a simple answer. What really happened over here is, it started in the US, which runs the reserve currency of the world. Many, many years ago, some of you may remember this, in 1950s, there was a long conference, 1.5 month long conference called a place called Bretton Woods in US, where the whole world on its knee went down to the US and said, "Humko paisa de do, our economy is in shambles after the war, we have to rebuild." And the US gave everybody money and made only one condition. After today, the world trade will be done only in US dollar. Before that, it was always in pound sterling, right? World switched to US dollar and that's become the reserve currency of the world. Many currencies have tried to replace it, not possible. When you print the reserve currency of the world, it does not go down. If we did the same thing, rupee will go into the basket, in the dustbin. They can do it. And as they do it, they supplied it in the assets market, not in the consumer market. They didn't give it into the hands of the households until last year. Most of the money went to banks. Banks took the money into equity market, bond market, real estate market, gold market. Why do you think the prices are going up of all these things? Yes, there is supply going up, but the P's are high worldwide. Where will they go? Where will this money go? It has to slosh around in asset markets, and sometimes it will go out. If interest rates people think are going to go up in the US by a little bit, money will flow out. Will the P in India come down? It will come down. Will it crash like a bloodbath? I don't think so. Will it? It's already come down by 5 or 7% in 3 trading sessions, right? This is the time to enter the market. If you are expecting that your market is going to fall off the cliff by 50%, that could happen under what circumstances? Pandemic, a new lease comes into the pandemic. We have a major war between 2 major countries, right? You have some major untoward event in the world, not economic ever. It will be a geopolitical, it will be something that comes out of the blue that can cause a crash like we saw in March of 2020. What do you do then? If you have the cash, buy. So therefore, at this point in time, create some cash. Get out of riskier assets, get into less risky assets. That would be my advice. That's what we are doing for our investors.
So we should keep the cash now?
Get out of more risky assets into less risky assets is what my advice is. Pure
Very-
cash earns you nothing.
Very nice. The one more question is now, what is your thoughts on investing directly in international market, either China, US? Is it a right time or we should continue in India?
So, it's going to sound very unpatriotic. There are 3 countries in the world which are going to deliver the highest returns in the next 5 years. US, China, and India. Right? I know that saying China many times, a lot of people say, "Aap China ko promote karte ho," and this and that. The fact is that country has done well. And now they're reinventing themselves by saying, we'll focus on the domestic economy. Because the international world is shutting their doors to China production, right? And tariff barriers are going up and not coming down. So they're reinventing themselves. A lot of the analysts are hopeful, but they are being more careful also. They're saying we can't be only with China like we used to be. People putting money in industry are being careful. They want a China plus one strategy, which is where India wins. Because we have set up our manufacturing opportunity very nicely. More and more people are coming to India to set up manufacturing. US is the only economy in the world that can surprise everybody by reinventing itself. It has done so consistently over the last 100 years. US economy is expected to grow at 5.5%. The largest economy in the world normally will grow at 1 to 2% and people will clap and celebrate. At 5.5% that the economy is going to grow and you are not investing in it, something is wrong with you. Right? So these are the
But
3
we are
economies of the
growing
world.
at 9.510.
Yeah, but look at the size. They are $24 trillion economy. We are not even $2.5 trillion economy. We can grow at 7.5%, 8%. That's good. That's fantastic. And we must invest in our own economy. But that economy growing at 5.5% and you don't invest in it, you're going to lose out something. So these are the 3 economies to invest. There is a possible 4th that will come up at some point in time, will be Germany.
Very good. Now my next question is, it is question from everybody. Identification of emerging sector, sunrise industries. These are the main factors which actually makes money in the market.
Sure. Good
So
question.
as
to
far
ask,
as your company is concerned and also the general mutual fund companies, what is the sunrise sector you are looking at or you have identified?
So like I just mentioned, according to me, electronics business in India is going to do extremely well because it's just growing so fast and there's so much incentive to do it in India now. You take futuristic businesses, anything to do with creation of batteries, right? Because we know the world is moving into the ESG domain, environmentally safer, socially better governed, and the battery businesses, particularly lithium ion and lithium ion substitutes, anybody setting up business in that space is going to do well for a very, very long time because the world needs to shift. Everybody, all the big investment managers in the world, the large institutional investment owners in the world are saying environment first. So solar PV cells, right? And that's happening in India. These are some of the futuristic ones, but let's take not so futuristic ones. Any business that is going to enable digital commerce, right? And we are now seeing 1 or 2 getting listed in India. I think in the next 5 years, you will see maybe 25 to 30, maybe more listings. Those are the places to be. Digital commerce, our penetration of digital commerce in India is the lowest among the large economies in the world. We are at less than 5% of total commerce, right? Unlike the bigger ones. That's why they didn't benefit from the digitization. We did. We still have a long way to go. So anything enabling digital commerce, for example, a hard business like logistics. Smallest logistics companies in this country are going to make a lot of money. It's not just Amazon and not just the big ones. Because micro distribution is going to be key. So if you start thinking about where the future is going to be, this is where the future is going to be.
That takes to another question. Can you talk us through evolution of ESG-centric investment philosophy?
Sure.
How does retail investor participate in that?
So what's happened in the world, and it's taken the world by surprise in the last 5 years, that this whole thing of sustainability took a different turn. people found that sustainability had a question mark, and people used to feel that if I go for sustainable investment, maybe I won't make as much money. Maybe I have to compromise the investment. So all the large investment managers of the world got together and said, no, we can't compromise on the environment, must be improved, and social commitment must be higher, and the governance of the companies must be better. The moment you say governance must be better, straight away you're asking for far better profitability, which means no leakages in the accounting. That's what simply stated governance means. And if there are no leakages in the accounting, the investor will make more money, right? They clubbed it together smartly. So now, when you invest in ESG companies integrating more and more with ESG principles, you actually make better investment return. And so everybody is waking up to the fact. I was talking to the other day one of the largest infrastructure creation companies in the country, the CFO, and he was saying, Ashutosh, we have a 100-year-old company. I am AAA rated. I'm one of the best names in the world. I'm going to raise bonds, and the ESG investors want to charge 50 basis points more. मेरे को 6.5% में बॉन्ड इशू करना होता है, मेरे को 7% मिल रहा है, 6.5 में नहीं मिल रहा है, because I am an environmental destroyer. My business is to build bridges, roads, वो तो मेरे नाम में ही है. And I may be AAA, I may be number 1 in the world, but I am not going to get the cheapest money. This is how the world is changing. So clearly, the way to make money out of this is two ways. You go with ESG compliant companies, you get better equity return. You go with the non-compliant companies, chances are you should be lending to them. You get better interest rates from them. So there is a way to make that money, but over a period of time, the direction is very clear. Then more and more companies, even in India, have to comply with ESG in order to make efficiency of capital happen.
Thank you very much. I think now I will throw the questions to audience. 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Please. Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Yeah, Ashu, thank you for this wonderful insight. I have this question for you, and especially most of us are business owners here, SME business owners. There's a lot of focus on retail investment or household investment. I just want to throw up light on the SME owners, because as SME owners, there's a cash flow which gets generated on a month-on-month basis. You know, that cash is available for me maybe for a shorter time. But very often, this cash is lying in a current account, or possibly it's lying in a short-term FD. How can the mutual fund as an industry, or mutual fund as an organization, can help us to make the best out of this money which is lying for a shorter time? Number one. Number two is...
You got a customer here.
Yeah. Number two is advantage of this, or advantage of this over a current account investment or over a short-term FD investment. And number three is how easy it's for us to invest in mutual funds as a private limited company or a partnership company.
Sure. Thanks for asking this question. I think you opened up an opportunity for me to speak about how you can benefit, all of you, if you are in the business. So all businesses who have, let's say, time to time, short-term cash flows and what we call treasury management, and therefore you manage your cash so that it actually produces a little more than lying, in the current account. So we have several products. The most popular among these is called the liquid fund. And the liquid fund is essentially the mark-to-market exposure of the liquid fund is close to zero, which means the market risk is almost close to zero. The returns typically are in line with a good banking, short-term banking. For example, a savings account. Currently, liquid fund returns are in the region of 3 to 3.5% on an annualized basis. You can get in and get out online. You can open an account on our website. You can invest online, and you can get out online. The redemption comes to you within a day. Okay, so if you put in a redemption today, tomorrow morning your account will be credited. So the liquid fund is used extensively by corporate and business setups for making sure that their money is not idle, right? There is increasingly, for people who have a longer stay, there are other slightly, so liquid fund typically, if you have money for a week, you can put it there. But if you have money for 30 days, then there are other similar, slightly longer tenure investment products in mutual funds. There's something called the ultra short-term bond fund, typically for a month. The return would be about another 50 basis higher. Instead of 3 to 3.5, it would be probably 4. And so on different horizons up to 1 year. There are all kinds of bond funds. Many of them have very little market exposure. There is very little risk. After what happened last year with one of the large fund houses, where it took a wrong risk in some of these funds, the regulation has become very tight. And we cannot do we cannot take wrong investment type in these kind of funds. So this is some of the funds you can use. There is another product called the arbitrage fund. The arbitrage fund is a very simple one. Basically, we are using that money to lend to arbitrage players in the marketplace and making a sort of an interest rate type of return of about annualizing at about 5 to 6%. That exposure technically is equity exposure. However, there is no equity investment in that. It used to be called many, many years ago in the informal market, it was called Badla financing. That has been now structured as a formal regulated product called an arbitrage fund. You could use that also. Now, the arbitrage fund typically is used by people who have negative cash flows, negative profitability in the coming up month or quarter, because then the taxability works out very well for that. In the debt liquid fund kind of returns, you would pay tax, which would be debt or non-equity taxation. So that's the kind of taxation you would have. But literally 2.5, 3, close to now currently, about 4 to 5 lakh crores out of the 38 lakh crores is in the liquid funds from different corporates of different sizes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, please. Yeah, mic there.
So my question is, do you see a fundamental change in the way markets are valuing companies? Because if you see traditionally, companies who used to make profits, markets used to appreciate them, and that's how used to drive the stock price. But if I see new age companies like a Zomato, Paytm, and as you said that the future is there, these companies are making losses with no clear line of sight of making profit in the say next 4 to 5 years. But still the market is appreciating them, and if you see Zomato, it's like 75 issue price and now 130, 135. So my question is that, do you see value coming in from these companies, and are these set of companies which will take Sensex say from 60,000 to a lakh, as you mentioned?
Sure, so 2 parts of the answer. One part is there value in companies that don't make profit and they're early stage, get into IPOs and list? So yeah, it's a proven fact. You take an Amazon, for example, right? When Amazon started, it just used to sell books online, and nobody gave it any time of day. But over a period of time, and it didn't make profit for a very, very long time. What really is you look for as an investment manager in companies which are in a new zone of creating a market is what portion of the market can they grab and keep on a sustained basis. I think somebody in the previous panel spoke about it. Is there demand? Is there sustainability of demand? And is there a capability in the company to catch that demand and keep it, right? So when you invest in Zomato, it ticks green on all the 3, or a Paytm. Now chances are, maybe tomorrow Swiggy will come up. We'll have to sit down and do a comparison saying what market share will Swiggy take, right? we might actually say that maybe Swiggy is a great candidate to back because somebody will buy it over, right? And then we'll make the money. So this is what is known as the carpet bagging time in this market. Ground is being captured. That is more important than profits at this stage. Once the ground is captured, profits will have to come because no way business is going to sit around and say, we can't keep funding the business with cash burn. And like I said, Amazon, Facebook, these are examples which for a very, very long time didn't make money. But look at the way they are now, hugely profitable. So you got to wait sometimes because these are early stage businesses and you're backing it because of the market share.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Will they be responsible for going to 100,000? Yes, they will contribute. But they are not the only ones.
Yeah. Last question. Yeah. Yeah.
Stock market, you know that it's about 60,000. You are telling it will go to 100,000 tons. It's not a question of when it goes. But do you think that this will happen even without Modi government?
I think.
No, you
Okay,
say
so I won't comment on the
political-
politics of this, okay?
What I'm just asking is that
Okay.
if the political situation changes, will it change? I only just want to know about
No. So let me say something. While I generally, as investment managers, we are very apolitical because you got to look at policy and its implementation and not who's doing it and whether there is a fan following, etc. Those are not, yes, it's a relevant issue that consistency of policy in India has stayed with consistency of government. There is no doubt in our mind that what has happened in the last 6 years has never happened in India before in terms of the development of commerce and business. And the way this has been unleashed, we only wish that there was better marketing of this worldwide. That's not enough. We don't see, everybody talks about China. China ne ye kiya, wo kiya. Nobody talks about India. But to look at like the things that I just spoke about, why manufacturing is the most attractive in this country and everybody else who is manufacturing anywhere else or starting a new company somewhere else is an idiot. He should be here. Not going to get better support and better returns anywhere else in the world. So this kind of a thing, I think, is very clear.
Thank you, sir. I think your 39 years of experience you've demonstrated here. You had worked with the leaders like Merrill Lynch, JM Mutual Fund, UTI Mutual Fund, and now with Mahindra Manulife. Thank you, sir. All the best in your life in future. Now we'll go to the next session. Mr. Gunashekar Baga is with us. He is Executive Vice President and State Head of IFCO Tokyo General Insurance Company Limited, a joint venture company of IFCO and Tokyo Marine Life. Now, as we all know, insurance is meant to safeguard us from unexpected happenings. There is life insurance, medical insurance, motor insurance, home insurance, fire insurance, travel insurance, and many more. There are different kind of policies also. Various expected happenings like earthquakes, wars, risk, turmoil, riots, fire, lot of things are there. Insurance is also a very technical term. I think it needs a great application of mind while taking policies. You are a mechanical engineer from JNTU, having vast and rich experience of both public and private general insurance companies, and specialized in risk, asset, and risk management. I think we cannot think of a better person than him to have, decipher a complicated subject, complicated insurance. In India, there are about 58 insurance companies. Out of these, 34 are non-life and 24 are life insurance companies. India is ranked 10th in the 10th largest life insurance market globally. Today, 74% FDI is allowed in insurance. Digital insurance and online insurance expected to, pick up exponential growth. My question to you, sir, in the first place, can you please throw some light on general insurance and medical insurance in India, its penetration, operation, and future scope?
Thank you, Mr. Shankar.
Yeah.
Good evening to all of you. Thanks for having me here amongst all entrepreneurs and youngsters. So the first question wherever I go, people ask is that being a mechanical engineer, what are you doing in insurance? So before anybody asks, I think let me answer myself, is that if you ask any engineering graduate, they are very overconfident by the time they complete engineering graduation. That is true with all the engineers, because the process of getting into engineering in India, as well as completion, getting through itself, will get that confidence. But after that, now you know that across all lines, people are switching wherever the destination takes through. So in very early stage, 30 years back itself, I switched my field that with the same confidence that engineers can do anything, including banking and insurance. The advantage what we get in insurance field is we will, first of all, get an opportunity to interact people like you who are specialized in their own fields, but we neither become specialists in any particular field, but we will become jack of all trades. We will come to know how the things are manufactured, how the things are transported, how the things are being sold in the market, what are the risks involved in each stage, starting from drawing board stage, projects, manufacturing, transport, sale. What if sale doesn't happen? So it has given a plethora of opportunity for me to learn throughout this 3 decades of journey, both through public sector as well as private sector general insurance company. So as you rightly said that products-wise, there may be many variety of products which many of our friends gets confused. But to simplify the insurance, we normally simplify the tree starting from life and non-life. So anything to deal with our lives is life insurance. Anything to do with our non-life is non-life general insurance. So within again general insurance, we further bifurcate as we don't deal with life insurance, so we skip life. So general insurance companies in India are allowed by IRDA to handle any product. We can design freely and sell any product other than natural death of a person. Any other risk pursued during our lifetime can be taken care by general insurance companies. So that is a very wide and vast scope. So that is why this evolution continues. For the past 30 years, I've been learning insurance, in general insurance. We have been innovating products. There are many more to do. As our innovators in various fields like chemicals and fertilizers and pharmaceuticals, you keep on innovating new products. During that process, new processes you innovate, new risks also emanate. So we have to be at par with you, understanding the risks involved during this process of innovation, and then risk mitigation is a parallel subject. So we provide life jackets as well as parachutes while you try to fly in your own respective fields. That is our job. So we also pray every day that no losses happens so that our balance sheets are protected, but losses do happen. So you know that how pandemic has impacted all of us for the past 2 years. So 2 years back, the type of balance sheets of insurance companies were different. And now these 2 years, it's totally taken a big U-turn. Irrespective of anybody's planning or any expectations, all the balance sheets of insurance companies worldwide have been burnt very badly. But fortunately, we have sufficient reserves to take care of such pandemics, and we are prepared to face many more such pandemics to come. So there's nothing to worry. You are big dreamers. You can go ahead with your big dreams. There is industry to support you. So as a general insurance industry, the health, the importance of health has been recently recognized by the public at large. And the results are now health pie of any general insurance market is almost now 20% of the overall revenue generations, which was very, very minor earlier, because all of us used to think that all of us are quite healthy, nothing will happen to us, we need not have to visit hospitals. So all these statements have been proven wrong, irrespective of age, irrespective of social strata and facilities, whatever we had. So it has touched all our lives. Every single family has been affected by pandemic. So, but all insured public have been reasonably taken care. Why I'm using reasonably is that the planning before pandemic towards health insurance by all of us have gone wrong ridiculously. Because all of us used to think earlier that a 5 lakhs health insurance cover is more than enough for our entire family based on the earlier estimates. But you know what happened during the pandemic. What was the demand, supply, and how hospitals and all other industries, how they've exploited all of us, and how the cost factors have impacted. And many of the policies have blown off, and many of the people were uncovered. So we were happy to support the people who were covered during this pandemic, but we were equally worried about the people who are not covered. So uncovered people were more during this pandemic. It is very, very sad about it. So that's about general insurance. And,
Yes. See, generally what happens is, insurance business is through brokers and agents. There is always bargain for premium, under insurance, wrong advice from advisors who don't have proper subject knowledge, and also due to competition, non-coverage of important risks is the order of the day. What is your opinion? What is your expert advice to the customers today here? How we should go about?
let me share a couple of things. That first decade of my insurance experience is that when I was working for public sector, we were only 4 companies. You had no choice. So one of us was supposed to be the insurance carrier. During that time, the methodology for buying insurance, very senior people, knowledgeable people from the industry, as high as company secretary, financial controller, as well as the technical committee, used to sit together. They used to explain the risk to us. We used to explain the policies available. They used to understand directly, and then sale used to happen. So the less misunderstandings were there initially when the sale was happening on direct mode. So when the industry was opened up, private insurances came. We did try to do the same thing. Parallelly, intermediation also has started. Broking community came. It was sold, of course, agency channel was there earlier also, and it has continued its journey after privatization also. Now, brokers also have come into the picture. A lot of intermediation happened, and a lot of other channels came into marketing. One is digital, another one is again banca channels, a referral mode. So there was a big disconnect between the insured and insurer. Wherever it was an informed decisions have been taken by the client directly, there is a less chance of mishaps while buying the policy. I think you might have seen in a couple of cases, this process goes through tendering process.
Yes.
So without knowing a product, if you go for tendering, then mishap has to happen. But again, I recommend for any standard product, like for example, if anybody is buying a standard product, like an accidental death of a person of age of so-and-so for a particular value, there's nothing to discuss. It's a very simple risk. It is, we call it as a sachet risk. Sachet is available, you can just buy it. You either buy directly or through somebody or digitally, nothing changes. But industrial risks and liabilities, when we talk, credit and all these things, D&O covers, unless insurer understands the business of insured or the industry, there has to be a big gaps. These bags creates a problem at the time of claim settlement.
What I find in the market is, you have brokers or agents, they have not been trained by the company. They have not been educated properly, how to assess the insurance. Of course, big cases, there are consultants, whereas small cases, nobody is there. There is a client and the broker or agent, he comes and sells, this is the insurance. But what happens when there is a hard selling? But when it comes to the claim, company will come out with so many things, These are not insured, these are not covered, this is the problem, that is the problem. You should have done this, you should have done that. you know, why the totally as insurance companies coming together and have a common educative policy for the clients. That is not missing. Maybe in your website it's there, but generally nobody sees that.
There is a difference between agency channel and broking channel.
Yeah.
When agency channel is to perform, they are actually partners of a single company. So
Okay.
they know the products of that particular company very well. When they go to the client, they explain the product very clearly. But now the multiple channel partners, they do sell on behalf of various companies. So there can be a variance of a product from company to company. So unless they go through the fine print, unless the agent or broker explains to the insured at the time of sale properly, at the risk of going on L1 basis, pricing, price war, a lot of things gets compromised.
Discount war.
Discount war. So what my sincere advice to all the insured community or maybe all of us is that insurance premium has to be seen as investment. It is not an expense in the balance sheet.
Right.
Whoever appreciate the premium as investment and have long-term relationship with the same partners, properly chosen partners, they will definitely get a benefit out of. Even at times, some things are missing. Previous 5 years experience, 10 years relationship can rescue these mishaps.
How do you look at this technology, digitalization, policy online, click of the buttons? You know, there are so many things where personal touch is not there. The person who is taking the insurance is not educated. You know, how do you address this?
Yeah, digitization is compulsory. We have to move towards that. There is no two ways about it. But again, I repeat that yes, all of us need everything at a click of a button. Now, recently, when we conducted a survey among our own insuring community, that when we released an app, how do you feel the app? So one of the feedback came from a very youngster group is that for buying a policy in our website, it seems we take 7 clicks to close the deal. So they say that we have another company which concludes the sale with 3 clicks. So to that extent, people are now sensitive.
Yeah.
So they are even started counting number of clicks. Earlier, the same insuring public was waiting in the queue to buy a policy. And if you get the policy within a week, that is supposed to be a super service. Now, number of clicks, that is level of impatience what we have. Another thing is like, for example, if we deliver the policy, soft copy, as per IRDA, we are supposed to deliver, we have been allowed to deliver soft copy of the policies through emails or through DigiLockers. Now, we have complied all of them during this pandemic because we could not deliver all the policy copies physically. Even police have been authorized or maybe advised to check the digital copy by just scanning the QR code. So QR code on the mobile is sufficient nowadays as a substitute to the policy. That is a level of digitization which nobody can escape it. So including public sectors, they have to come up, follow the same process, launch all the products digitally, and then make the experience felt. So that is the order of the day. We cannot
My last
escape.
question is towards this medical insurance. We find lots and lots of problems there. Coverage, hospital issues, cashless, you know, the disease covered, not covered. You know, there's so many things there. You know, what is your advice to us as far as medical insurance is concerned?
Yes, sir. Even as a consumer, all of us do have, as a policy holder, all of us do have the same feeling. But irrespective of our social strata and then educated, non-educated and all, the moment we enter into the reception of hospital, all of us will become laymen. We will forget to touch what coverage we have, what disease we have, and who is charging how much. Is there any regulator? To start with selling a health policy, we have been allowed to file the rates in advance with the regulator. We cannot charge either less or more than the filed rates by each company. So we standardize a product, we prefix all the limits, for example, room rents, or maybe disease-wise cap, or some particular package-wise pre-agreed rates. But when we are in dire need of this particular hospitalization, we can't go through all those limits. So that is where initial confusion happens. So we are not allowed to charge higher premium for a particular product, but at the same time, these hospitals, when they have agreed to perform, like for example, a cataract operation at normal time, generally they may charge 25,000 rupees. But during pandemic, in the name of pandemic, how they have charged, all of us know. So during these 2 years, the performance of health policy and the feedback and the opinion about the health insurers basically changed dramatically. So what I request is that we need to review all our health policies, and maybe during peacetime, we should try to understand what we have bought.
Your hospitals are not following SOPs, standard operating policies. I think insurance companies should be very, very careful while selecting the hospital itself. The problem is with the hospitals, may not be the insurance companies. That is the problem. Anyway, I think one question we'll take from the public because we are running out of time. Any one question? If no questions, we will move on to the next session. Yeah, please. Udhar, last. There.
Hello. The actually maximum more than 50% people are from hotel industry. Okay, actually this booking the premium and taking the premium is very easy, but sales and service is very difficult. In the time of claims, flood claims, since 2, 3, 4 years, actually so many hoteliers come with the problem like cyclone, flood, fire and all. In this, some hotels, so hoteliers, after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, they are claiming. In the time of claim, actually how to make good the loss, this is the technical issue. And the surveyors, all quotations, bills, receipts, everything is collecting. In the time of settlement, they're asking for balance sheet.
Let the question be short, please.
Yeah, they have furniture fixture showing this much, this and that much. Actually, how to come out with this?
Yeah, let me tell you that surveyors, whoever comes for assessment of the laws, are basically independent professionals. They are licensed by IRDA. But whatever report they release is only recommendatory. The final authority of settlement, either plus or minus, lies with the insurance company. So my best advice for you could be the justification or maybe quantification of loss. You are the best person to explain how much loss you have incurred, directly physical damage as well as if it is any business interruption, if the policy is taken. If you can properly explain to the company, even if surveyor is not behaving proper, you can even request for a second survey also. Or you can take a second opinion from another professional surveyor, either on your own, or you can give a written request to the insurance company to change the surveyor or ask for the additional survey assessment. Through that, you can go it.
Yeah, thing is, quotations and bills, receipt, everything is perfect. And balance sheet shows them some negative area. How to make good the loss? That is the important area. Actually, these are the issues issued only in the time of settlement. Actually, for this purpose, our hoteliers also, you have to give some tip how to book their assets, how to maintain.
Normally for hotels, if you insure on reinstatement value policy, we don't get into the balance sheet and check your gross block, whether you have properly done it or not. But at the time of claim, the only condition of the policy is that it should be adequately insured. If let us say if something has happened, like let us say compound wall has collapsed, if you have to rebuild the compound wall, how much is going to be the reconstruction cost at the time of when you are going to reinstate the property? To that value, if it is adequate, sum insured is adequate, then no further questions will be asked. It will not, there is no point in going to the balance sheet on how much you have declared in the balance sheet and how is your gross block looking. So we don't depend on balance sheet. So it has to be properly based on the reconstruction cost. If you're able to establish that I have incurred this much money on account of this reconstruction, that is enough. If it is as long as within the sum insured, it is reimbursable.
Thank you very much. Thank you
you.
very much, sir. I think you have given an excellent presentation on insurance. Thank you very much. Now we will move on to our next session, that is asset restructuring companies. We have with us Mr. Vivek Grover, CEO of JM Financial Asset Restructuring Company Limited, which is one of the top ARCs. He is having 27 years of experience in this field, a BTech and MBA finance degree holder, and having very, very vast experience in this field. Sir, we welcome you for this session. ARCs are very special type of financial institution that buys the bank debtors, NPAs, on mutually agreed basis. ARCs are registered under RBI and regulated under SARFAESI Act. ARCs have almost taken very huge NPAs, settled many bad loans so far. Being new subject, our members are very eager to know about this. We know the procedure. There is, I think there are about 28, 30 ARCs now in India operating. HSBC, ICICI, Aditya Birla, SBI, Nippon, JM, Kotak, Axis, UTI. There are many. List is endless. I think each one has taken over, I think 3-4 companies about 4 lakh crores, and another 3-4, 2 lakh crores, and some companies below 2 lakh crores, they are managing the assets which are taken over. The first procedure, sending notice under section 32, and then after 60 days, if the creditor doesn't pay, under section 34, if the 75% of the guarantors have agreed, you're going for the taking over of the assets. Am I right? This is the way it is. Now, yeah, my question to you is, ARCs are, playing a very, very vital role in settling the bad loans. There are about, as I said, 28, 30 companies operating in India. Can you please explain their role? What is the way of operation? How do you take over the bad loans from the banks or institutions or NBFCs? How do we run? Yeah, Mike, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Audible, yeah?
Near.
Okay. So, like how ARCs came into being.
Ah.
So, like what had happened was till about say 84, 85, mid-80s of last century, like we were a very closed economy. Basically, for doing a business, one needed licenses, and the main skill set for an entrepreneur was his ability to manage licenses. Yeah. From say late 80s and
I think little closer will be better. I think.
Or late 80s or say early 90s, the economy started opening up. So that's how like we had entrepreneurs like Mr. S.K. Shetty or Mr. Chari was here, like who could actually take advantage of the opening of the economy, and first generation entrepreneurs, they came into being. Like, so here main skill set was not managing licenses, but actually like knowing the subject or the passion for the subject, for the like field in which they were. So, but in this case, like it was inevitable that they will, some businesses will not always succeed. And earlier businesses also, which were set up in the time of licensing, they were never like meant to be sustained. Like they were never had that type of economies of scale to survive in the open economy. So gradually, like government also started thinking in terms of how to address the industrial sickness. And they first came with the act called, which was SICA, Sick Industries Companies Act, under which a BFR came up. BFR was successful initially to address the woes of the sick company, but then the processes were too long. There was it was a judicial body, it was a semi-judicial body. Meanwhile, to address the problems of banks for rising loans, they separated the recovery procedure from high courts to specialized institutions like DRT were set up. But even that was not enough, because that was largely to recover their loans, but nothing was being done to address the industry. Like, because industry, if it has defaulted on the loan, or the company which has defaulted on the loan doesn't mean that the
You can
asset
take
is.
this mic, please, because some sound.
So I'll,
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the company which has once defaulted on the loan doesn't mean that its assets are bad. It might be because of some extraneous reason, or maybe like since the promoter is new, like the person who has started the company is also new. So he's very likely to make a mistake, but he'll immediately correct and again get it back on stream. So there's nothing being done. So that's why like government brought in this act, SAFESI Act, under which the ARCs or asset reconstruction companies were set up. So these asset reconstruction companies were to perform two major roles. One is they were to buy the NPAs from banks. Reason being that banks, for them, the recovery is not a specialized work. They have got a lot of other business. Their main business is to lend. Their main business is to include financial inclusion, like there's so many other trade finance. So recovery is a very specialized function, but then that's not the main business. So they thought like, let's have separate companies which can address to this. And secondly, one of the major role was reconstruction for ARCs. So they wanted like some specialized agencies to actually look into the problem the company is facing, which has defaulted, and try to reconstruct its business rather than go for simple liquidation of it or sell the assets. So that was the main reason, like how these came, like how far these asset reconstruction companies have been successful in this latter part of the objective is, I think they have had a mixed success. There have been a lot of success stories also, like where the ARCs have actually helped the companies to restructure their loans, to manage, to arrange buyers, to arrange to arrange an ecosystem for the promoter, like to come out of his problems. Because one thing is there, like a lot of promoters, first generation promoters, they normally have, so like not to know hear this, they normally have, say he might have a passion for manufacturing, or he might have a passion for marketing. He'll not understand finance. How to manage finances is not this. We have seen so many skilled doctors starting a nursing home, and they are very good in their field, but somehow they have not been able to manage their finances. There have been like embezzlements at their hospitals or this. So like they make mistake once. So you need to give them a chance to come out of their mistakes and put their business on stream. So their ARCs have come into being, and for ARCs and banks, the difference is that for us, sir, it is a bread and butter.
Yeah.
It is a bread and butter. We do it every day, day and night. While for a banker like whose loan has gone bad, for me it may be one, like he might have started his career in a branch, he might have then been in trade finance, he might have been in some other area in the bank, and then he has ended up with a bad loan. But for us, like my team has been brought up on this. So they know how to address the issues also.
My question is now,
Yes, sir.
how do this is advantageous to the borrower? You know, once you take over
Yes, sir.
through this surface eye, or
So
then
the-
whether the borrower can go back to ARCs, take back the assets? Is there
So
a
like
provision?
there's two parts of it.
Or one more
borrower-
question is it advantageous to the borrower to take the assets from ARCs rather than settling with the banks?
So take the assets, means like what we do is, like I'll come to that. So like as a ARC, we take over the loan from the bank. We don't take over the asset of the company. What we take over is the loan of the bank, and we get the same rights which the bank
Sir, loan with the assets, no, sir?
So assets are secure to that loan. So
Yeah.
unless I enforce my security, unless I enforce the
So whether
security,
independently loan is valued or it is valued based on the asset?
So we take loan with the underlying rights which the banker enjoys like he also has a security on it. So like what he enjoys as a lender, that he has a security. So in case of like his loan is not being repaid, he can enforce the security and sell it to someone else to recover his loan. So but when I take over, like when an ARC takes over the loan from the bank, he does not have any special dispensation as such.
Borrower.
No, the ARC. Like
Yes.
whatever powers a bank has, same powers are with the ARC also, and nothing more. So he also has to go through the same process to recover his loan, enforce security.
Nick, my question is it advantageous to the borrower?
I'll tell you how it can be advantageous, sir. Like, how can there be a advantage?
Because majority are either SMEs and small
Yes, sir. Like,
industries.
I'll tell you, like, how it is. One, I've already said that, sir, like, for a banker, he has got so many other roles.
That's right.
For a ARC person, it is his bread and butter. For him, like, he can recover the maximum amount only if the company survives, company gets its business on, on a viable footing again. Because if he tries to recover by way of selling his assets, recovery will definitely be less. So that's why it is advantageous for the borrower also, because he understands the problem and he's prepared to wait for it, because he has just bought the loan. He has got some more patience to recover the loan. He can give an opportunity, one or even two opportunities to the borrower to get his business on, back on track and repay the loan, which a banker may not be able to do, because one, he has run through that cycle and this is not his main business, and secondly, at times the company may need money to restart its business or to add to the working capital so that he can add to the proper scale, which a banker is constrained. If his one loan is gone bad, it is an NPA, he may not be able to lend again. We can. We are being authorized by RBI to do it, and we do it also.
Okay.
So third way, how a borrower can, whose business is not doing well, can take advantage is, one, he has come to a person who understands, who wants to understand business and help him. Second is who is prepared to give him time. Third is that many a times in India, for historical reasons, it has been a So for historical reasons, it has been a consortium lending. Even for a say 100 crores loan, there might be, sir, 4 bankers to it. So they never, at times they don't see eye to eye. Like this one bank might be prepared to wait, other bank may not be prepared to wait. So once ARC has taken all the loans from all the 4 banks, so he needs to come and negotiate with only one person. So that's how also it helps. That his loans have come to one person, now he's going to negotiate only with one.
Sir, can you tell us about the stress funds and its role now? There are many stress funds are there in the market.
Yes,
how
sir.
do they operate? What is the connection between ARC and banks, and how do they operate?
Sir, ARCs are set up by RBI. So they function in a very regulated environment. They are allowed to do only one business, not more than this. But they have a big advantage is that they need not put up all the money that is required to buy a loan of their own. They can do it only by 15%, and rest of the 85% they can attract other investments. So these investors or other investors can be AIF, that is the funds,
Stress funds.
or it can be the selling bank itself, the bank who has sold the loan. He can also be AIF. So AIF are specialized funds which are looking at a higher yield by investing in a distressed company.
Assets, yeah.
But yes, but they have not been set up by RBI. They don't enjoy the same dispensation or the same regulations or the same power which has been provided to the ARCs by law to recover the loan. So they normally tie up with the ARCs, they invest in their trusts. Yeah, so that is for the investors who are looking at a higher return. So they can invest in AF in turn invest with
One
us.
more question in my mind is, now the ARCs take over the loans from the banks, paying some percentage. There is some time period for the settlement. Suppose settlement doesn't happen. What happens? That asset goes back to the bank?
No, sir.
Or
It doesn't.
borrower is liable?
It doesn't, because it doesn't. What RBI says is that if a bank is selling a loan to either to ARC or to anyone, it's totally on no recourse basis. It's off his balance sheet.
Yeah.
So there's no way that this loan can be sold back to the bank.
So it will be
Many-
bad loan for the ARC?
It will
If
be,
doesn't-
yes, it will be like a bad investment for ARC, but then it is what ARCs are typical venture capital. Like if it is a venture capital, they make set 10 investments, they know that 3 or 4 will go bad. It's high risk business, some will go back, but then they try to recover, the yield expectation from the, or the return expectation from the other loans is high. So that's how they, on a portfolio basis, they try to make a decent return.
Any questions from the audience? One question. Yeah.
If yes, so your investment will like is a venture venture
Let
capital.
question be very short, huh?
Yeah.
Because-
Yes, that's all.
Yeah.
No, sir, like what I can do is, what we can do is, you can convince your bank to sell the loan to an ARC. So ARC will buy it, but still the properties will come as a security to the ARC, and then ARC will give you some more time.
That means you will become a venture partner with me.
No, it's not a venture partner. No, it's, I'm still a lender. I'm still a lender.
Lender.
Still a lender.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank
One
you,
minute,
all
one-
of you.
one
It
minute,
was
sir.
really
1 minute,
fascinating
1
session.
minute.
We all,
One more question.
yeah, please. Fast.
Whether ARC has specialized people, industry-wise, service-wise, to reconstruct the ARC acquired industry oblique business or only recovery business?
So like we don't, I mean, we don't call ourselves as a recovery people. Like we call ourselves as a reconstruction business. But yes, we tie up with the industry experts in case like we feel that we need to
Revive.
we need to like join hands with the promoter to like overseas business. Or say like if we feel that promoter doesn't have enough management capability, then we tie up with industry. There are specialized agencies from various industries. A person, we might tie up with someone like who has already run a chemical industry or a pharmaceutical industry, and we say that, okay, like you be CEO, and we'll similarly engage a CFO also, and try to run it. But we don't have it directly on our rolls, but we have tie-ups with different
You
industries.
are only recovery part.
So like, yes, we buy loan and our business is to buy loan and try to recover more out of it, what we have invested.
Okay, one more question, sir. How the ARC can help technocrats company and startup company from to come out from the financial fiasco?
So that's difficult. Like ARCs till date have not been in either the startups or this because that's high risk business.
They are not
and
connected to
They're not
startups.
really connected. Like
Connected to startups.
we have been dealing largely with manufacturing industry or the service industry or the like manufacturing service or that's all. Like it's really not been connected with the startups.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, all of you. I think it was a really nice session. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful session where people have got a lot of knowledge with regards to different financial sectors. I would request our President, Mr. K.C. Shetty, and our Vice President, Mr. S.B. Shetty, to please come on dais and honor our guest. This session was sponsored by Mahindra Manulife Mutual Funds. I would request our President to please hand over the mementos to our speakers.